A giant imp attack gives readers almost too much of a good thing when Mr. Mxyzptlk gives Jimmy Olsen his powers to fight off an interdimensional entity for the fate of the world. We're going to talk about it right here in our review of Batman Superman World's Finest number 28 from DC Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Batman Superman World's Finest number 28. Before we dig into the issue, let's recap briefly what happened last time. Jimmy Olsen was granted the powers of all his past incarnations that have ever had superpowers, and they split up into the Jimmy League or the Jimmy Olsen Squad or the Olsen Squad or whatever you want to call it, but it was a lot of fun. And they battled all the different villain mites that had infected and invaded the world to become the last hero standing. Unfortunately, that turned Jimmy into Earth's mightiest hero, which drew the attention of the powerful villain mastermind behind the Mite invasion, and his sights are set squarely on Jimmy Olsen. That brings us to Batman Superman World's Finest number 28. Jimmy is confronted by this massive magical entity with a challenge to fight to the death to be crowned the interdimensional realm's greatest superpower. Mr. Mxyzptlk doesn't know what to do, and when Robin grabs him by the throat and says, "You got to protect Jimmy," he does the only thing he can think of, which is he switches magical powers with Jimmy. So now Mr. Mxyzptlk is just a regular guy, and Jimmy has all of Mxyzptlk's powers. And Jimmy quickly finds out, when he lets his imagination go, that there are benefits to having the powers of a god. Meanwhile, the World's Finest and Batmite are stuck still in the sixth dimension, and they start encountering time echoes of themselves from a minute in the future, a minute in the past, and all across time and space. And it's starting to become a little overwhelming. They demand that Batmite gets them back to the third dimension and Earth, but they figure out that Batmite is stalling because now he's encountering all these different Batmen from across the realms of existence, and it's like candy to him. It's like heaven. But they eventually calm him down and say, "Look, be a help, don't be a hindrance." And Batmite starts to get the message in his head, and they start leaping through the different dimensions, first from the sixth to the fifth and fourth, and so on. Unfortunately, Batmite overshoots the mark, and he eventually lands the World's Finest in the first dimension, where they have to talk him out of staying there and getting stuck for all time. Elsewhere, Earth's heroes desperately try to get to the championship fight, but Metropolis is surrounded by an impenetrable, that's a tough one, force field. Robin suddenly realizes that something isn't quite right about this massive being that's shown up. This Doommite, what they call it on the cover, appears to have defeated Jimmy with a titanic punch, but the villain won't leave the third dimension. So Robin leaps into action, begins taunting the villain to buy time, and hopefully expose the villain's motivations and or weaknesses. The delay tactic works, but only for a little bit, and Robin gets zapped with a painful blast. When it looks like the Boy Wonder's down for the count and he's about to get killed, Justice Mites arrive. And Jimmy, along with the Justice Mites, explains that when the titanic blow that looked like it killed him in the prior scene didn't really kill him at all, because at the last second or the last instant, he says his name backwards and it zaps him back to the fifth dimension. There he finds all the other hero mites cowering in fear, and he rallies them with an amazing speech that we never get to see, which is okay, fine. And they decide to return to Earth to band together and fight off this gigantic monster. Sadly, the combined might of the Justice Mites isn't enough, and this massive magical being pretty much swaps them away, possibly even killing a few of them. However, Batmite heeded the pep talk that he got from Batman and managed to return the World's Finest back to Earth to join the fight. But before Batman can say, "I have a plan," and because Batman always has a plan, the villain zaps Batman into the form of a lifeless puppet. And so now the World's Finest have returned against a massive threat, and the only person who has an idea about how to stop him is now a non-talking piece of wood. So what do we like about Batman Superman World's Finest number 28? Mark Waid continues to deliver the biggest, loudest, wildest, craziest, most entertaining comic in terms of pure, sugar-coated, popcorn candy, pop rock fun from DC and Marvel. You're in for a good time when Jimmy Olsen gets the powers of a god and he decides to let loose because he is wholesome but incredibly imaginative, and you get a few wow moments in there that look like they're a lot of fun and you'd wish we'd explore more of across DC's titles. What didn't we like about Batman Superman World's Finest number 28? The craziness is almost too much. You can overdo the sugar consumption. If you got little kids and you give them too much sugar, you know exactly what happens. A crash is inevitable. But before you get to the crash, you get this buildup of craziness that gets almost too loud and starts to become noise and obnoxious. Wade hits you so hard and fast with one crazy development after another that there isn't enough time to get the story to breathe, to let the scenes kind of take on gravity and weight. Instead, you get a comic that should be full of cool, fun ideas that really kind of get your imagination juices flowing, but instead you get the TikTok montage clip version of a cool comic with cool, fun ideas. So it's like rapid fire, almost ADHD type of storytelling, and it gets fun, but after a while it starts to get a little annoying. Let's talk about the art quality. So this is the surprise because the art quality takes a slight dip. Now you say, wait a minute, Dan Mora is the GOAT, right? There's no way there can be a dip in this. There is, but that's because Dan Mora didn't draw the comic all the way through. You got a guest artist on the book by the name of Travis Mercer. Their styles are similar, but you can see where the handoffs occur. I mean, Mercer gets close, but he's not Dan Mora. And when the handoffs happen, you can see the quality sort of change and not quite have the same crispness, not quite the same sharpness, not quite the same level of a punch that Mora has, and Mora is praised for, rightfully so. Now, to be fair, the art isn't terrible by any stretch, but when Mora has set the bar so high that even when you take a small dip, you can see it. And yeah, that's just the way it is. I'm sure there was probably some kind of time constraint or something. Don't know exactly why that happened. But even though Mercer does his level best to live up to Mora's standards, it doesn't quite get there. And you see the shifts in the art quality, and it's a little bit of a distraction. So final thoughts. What do we think about Batman Superman World's Finest number 28? I mean, you get shot in the face with a fire hose of action, twists, energy, big loud developments, all kinds of craziness, all kinds of wackiness. And if that's what you're into and you're having fun with that, great. Please have more fun with that. However, the tale is starting to get a little bit ADHD in its hyperhero overload. And the art team's quality kind of is a little uneven in this issue. So for the world's finest, maybe not the world's best issue in the series. Therefore, we're going to give Batman Superman World's Finest number 28 from DC Comics an 8 out of 10. Still a pretty decent score because this overall is a pretty fun issue, but just it comes down a little bit because of the inconsistent art and also because the plot is just almost overdoing it with the amount of noise and rapid fire distractions. But let us know what you think. Are we saying that we're the enemy of fun here? Are we taking ourselves too seriously? Or is there just a little bit of truth in the madness of what's going on? Let us know in the comments. And overall, if you think you're a fan of World's Finest as one of the better books at DC, please give us a thumbs up. I want to know your opinion about that. So thank you very much for joining, and please stay tuned through the outro for the next review.